A scream tore through the grand ballroom of the Four Seasons Boston. The crystal chandelier trembled above as distinguished guests in formal wear scattered like startled birds, trampling each other in their desperation to escape. In the strobing emergency lights, a small figure in white stood frozen in the center of the polished marble floor. A little girl, her face a mask of terror, eyes wide and unblinking as chaos erupted around her. Jack Sullivan registered everything in the split second before he moved. The gunman at the entrance, the muzzle flash, the child separated from the fleeing crowd. His body reacted before his mind could process muscle memory from years of training taking over. 20 feet of open space between them. Screams, another shot. Jack lunged forward, his worn dress shoes sliding on the marble as he sprinted toward the girl. Time compressed into a series of rapid snapshots. The child's face, the gunman pivoting. Jack's shoulder dropping as he accelerated. His arms outstretched. The impact as he reached her, wrapping his body around her small frame, turning his back to the shooter in one fluid motion. The sledgehammer blow to his left shoulder. The spray of warm blood. The sickening spin as he fell, carefully angling his body to absorb the impact. They hit the floor together, Jack cradling the girl's head against his chest. The sound of his own breathing filled his ears, drowning out the chaos. Through gritted teeth, he managed to whisper, "You're safe now, kid." The little girl sobbed against him, her white dress now stained crimson. Jack's vision swam dark spots pulsing at the edges. He tasted copper in his mouth. Security guards swarmed the gunman, tackling him to the ground. Too late for prevention, but at least no one else would be hurt. "What's your name?" Jack asked, fighting to stay conscious to keep the girl calm. Her voice trembled. "Amanda." "Amanda, pretty name." His words slurred slightly. "I'm Jack." A woman's scream cut through the din. "Amanda! Oh God! Amanda!" A striking blonde in a midnight blue evening gown ran toward them, her designer heels abandoned somewhere behind her. She fell to her knees beside them, frantically checking her daughter for injuries. "Mommy, I'm okay," Amanda said, her voice small but steady. "He saved me." The woman's eyes met Jack's for the first time. Not just any woman, Elizabeth Parker. Jack recognized her from magazine covers and news broadcasts. CEO of Parker Innovations, the elite of Boston's elite. Elizabeth's perfectly manicured hands were shaking as she helped Amanda from Jack's weakening grasp. "Thank you," she whispered, the words entirely inadequate for what had just happened. Jack tried to respond, but his mouth wouldn't cooperate. The ballroom ceiling spun above him, the chandelier a glittering carousel. His wallet had fallen from his jacket pocket during the fall. Amanda picked it up with trembling fingers. A weathered photograph slipped out Jack with a beautiful dark-haired woman and a baby all smiling. The image was now stained with Jack's blood. "He has a family too," Amanda whispered, holding the photo like something precious. Darkness crept in from the edges of Jack's vision. Somewhere sirens wailed. The last thing he saw before consciousness fled was Amanda's face, her eyes wide with concern, his own blood smeared across her cheek like war paint. 3 days later, Jack woke to the steady beep of hospital monitors and the scent of antiseptic. His shoulder throbbed beneath layers of bandages. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was or why. Then it all came rushing back, the gala, the gunman, the little girl in white. "Daddy." Jack turned his head to find Lily sitting in a chair beside his bed, her small hand clutching his. His 6-year-old daughter's face was pale with worry, dark circles under her eyes. She wore her favorite yellow dress, the one with butterflies that they'd found at a thrift store last summer. "Hey, Ladybug," his voice came out as a rasp. "You've been here the whole time." Lily nodded, her brown pigtails bouncing. "Mrs. Kowalski brought me. The nurses said I could stay. They gave me pudding." Jack managed a smile, though it hurt his dry lips. "Chocolate." "Vanilla, I saved you one." She pointed to a small plastic cup on the bedside table. "That's my girl." He squeezed her hand gently. "Always thinking of others." Mrs. Kowalski, their elderly neighbor who watched Lily when Jack worked night shifts, appeared in the doorway. "Thank the Lord," she said, crossing herself. "You had us worried sick, Jack Sullivan." "Sorry about that." Jack tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through his shoulder. "Don't you move," Mrs. Kowalski scolded. "The doctor said you lost a lot of blood. That bullet nearly—" She glanced at Lily and thought better of finishing the sentence. "Well, you're lucky to be alive." Lucky wasn't exactly how Jack felt, but he nodded anyway. "How long have I been out?" 3 days, Lily answered promptly. "I counted." A soft knock on the doorframe interrupted them. Jack looked up to see Elizabeth Parker standing there, hesitant in a way that seemed at odds with her public persona. Beside her stood Amanda holding a teddy bear almost as big as herself. Gone was the blood-stained white dress replaced by jeans and a pink sweater that made her look like any other 8-year-old. "May we come in?" Elizabeth asked. Mrs. Kowalski's eyes widened in recognition. Of course," she said, suddenly flustered. "I'll just go find some coffee." Elizabeth entered, her hand on Amanda's shoulder. Up close, without the panic and blood of their first meeting, Jack could see the fine lines around her eyes, the weariness beneath her polished exterior. She wore simple, dark slacks and a cashmere sweater, attempting to blend in, though that was probably impossible for her. "Mr. Sullivan," she began, then corrected herself. "Jack, I wanted to thank you in person. What you did for Amanda." Her voice wavered slightly. "There aren't words." Amanda approached his bed, extending the teddy bear toward him. "This is for you," she said solemnly. "His name is Sergeant Bear. He's brave like you." Jack accepted the stuffed animal with his good hand. "Thank you, Amanda. That's very kind." Lily watched the exchange with curious eyes. "Did you help that girl, Daddy?" Before Jack could answer, Amanda turned to Lily. "Your daddy saved my life. He jumped in front of a bullet for me." Lily's eyes widened. "Like in your Navy stories?" Jack nodded, uncomfortable with the attention. "Something like that." Elizabeth studied him with new interest. "Navy. SEAL Team 2, 2 tours in Afghanistan." Jack shifted in the bed, wincing. "That was a lifetime ago." "I saw it on the news," Elizabeth said. "They're calling you a hero." Jack grimaced. "I'm just a guy who did what anyone would do." "Not anyone," Elizabeth countered. "Most people ran away." An awkward silence fell. Amanda broke it by turning to Lily. "Do you want to color? I brought markers." She pulled a small art set from her backpack. "Can I, Daddy?" Lily asked, already sliding off her chair. Jack nodded. "Stay where I can see you." The girls settled on the floor near the window, heads bent together over paper, as if they'd known each other forever. Jack watched them for a moment, then turned his attention back to Elizabeth. "How is she doing?" he asked quietly. Elizabeth sank into the chair Lily had vacated. "Physically, she's fine. Emotionally, she glanced at her daughter. "She's been having nightmares. The therapist says that's normal." "And you?" The question seemed to surprise her. "Me. It couldn't have been easy for you either." Elizabeth looked down at her hands. Manicured nails, no rings. "I'm used to crisis management. This is just—" She paused, searching for words. "Different." Jack nodded. He understood crisis management all too well. "The police told me the gunman was targeting me." Elizabeth continued, her voice low enough that the girls couldn't hear. "Something about Parker Innovations' new security contract with the Pentagon. They're still investigating." Jack absorbed this information silently. "Not random violence, then?" "Targeted. I've increased security for both of us," Elizabeth added, "which Amanda hates, but it's necessary." A doctor entered the room, clipboard in hand, interrupting their conversation. "Mr. Sullivan, good to see you awake. I'm Dr. Patel." She glanced at Elizabeth and the children. "Perhaps we could have some privacy." "Of course." Elizabeth stood. "Amanda, we should go." Amanda looked up from her drawing. "But we just got here." "We can come back tomorrow," Elizabeth promised. "Mr. Sullivan needs to rest." Amanda gathered her markers reluctantly. "Can Lily come play at our house sometime?" Elizabeth looked startled by the request, then uncertain. She glanced at Jack. "Perhaps when Mr. Sullivan is feeling better, we could arrange something." Jack nodded, though he couldn't imagine his daughter in Elizabeth Parker's world. Beacon Hill Mansions and South Boston apartments existed in different universes, separated by more than just the Charles River. As they prepared to leave, Amanda handed Lily her drawing. "This is for your dad," she whispered, "so he doesn't forget us." After they'd gone, Lily brought the paper to Jack. It showed 4 stick figures holding hands, 2 tall, 2 small, standing in front of what looked like a house. "For our family," it was written across the top in a child's careful printing. "She thinks we're a family now," Lily explained, confusion in her voice. "Because you saved her." Jack stared at the drawing, something twisting in his chest that had nothing to do with his injury. "That's sweet, but it doesn't work that way, Ladybug." Their partner cleared her throat. "Mr. Sullivan, if I could examine you now." The news wasn't great. The bullet had torn through muscle and nicked bone. Jack would need physical therapy, possibly more surgery down the line. Weeks, maybe months of recovery before he could work again. After the doctor left, Jack stared at the ceiling, mental calculations running. Their health insurance was decent thanks to the security company, but it wouldn't cover everything. His savings would be depleted quickly. Rent on their small South Boston apartment was due in 2 weeks. Lily needed new shoes for school. Daddy, Lily climbed carefully onto the bed beside him. Are you going to be okay? Jack pushed his worries aside and managed a smile. Of course, Ladybug. We've been through tougher spots, haven't we? She nodded solemnly. Like when the heat broke last winter. Exactly. That had been 3 days of huddling under every blanket they owned while the ancient building's boiler was repaired. We're Sullivan strong, right? Sullivan strong, she echoed their family motto since Sarah died. Jack's thoughts drifted to his late wife. What would Sarah think of all this, of him taking a bullet for a stranger's child while their own daughter waited at home? But he already knew the answer. Sarah would have done exactly the same thing. It was one of the reasons he'd fallen in love with her, her instinct to protect, to help, to do the right thing, regardless of cost. The photo Amanda had found, now returned to his wallet, had been taken 6 months before Sarah's diagnosis. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. Aggressive. By the time they caught it, there were limited options. Sarah had fought hard for Lily's sake more than her own, but some battles couldn't be won with willpower alone. 3 years later, the grief had dulled from a stabbing pain to a persistent ache. Jack had learned to function around it, to be both mother and father to Lily. They had their routines, their small traditions. Movie night on Fridays with microwave popcorn, Saturday morning pancakes shaped like animals. Bedtime stories every night, no matter how tired he was. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And now, lying in a hospital bed with his future suddenly uncertain, Jack wondered what would become of the life they'd carefully built from the wreckage of their loss. 2 days later, Jack was discharged with a prescription for pain medication he was reluctant to fill. His military experience had shown him too many guys who'd started with legitimate pain and ended up with addictions that destroyed their lives. He'd make do with over-the-counter stuff when it got really bad. Mrs. Kowalski insisted they stay with her until he was more mobile. Jack protested, but she was adamant. Your apartment has those narrow stairs. How will you manage? Besides, Lily and I have a puzzle to finish. So Jack found himself installed on Mrs. Kowalski's floral sofa, arm in a sling, watching daytime television while Lily was at school. The elderly woman fussed over him, bringing homemade soup and endless cups of tea. My Henrik was a soldier too, she told him for perhaps the 100th time. Polish resistance. He understood pain. When the doorbell rang mid-afternoon, Mrs. Kowalski peered through the lace curtains and gasped. Saints preserve us, she muttered hurriedly, patting her white hair into place. It's that rich lady from the news. Elizabeth Parker stood on the front step, looking out of place in her tailored coat amid the working-class neighborhood. This time she was alone. Mrs. Kowalski, Jack began, struggling to sit up. You don't have to. But she had already opened the door. Mrs. Parker, she greeted as if welcoming royalty. Please come in. Jack is just resting. Elizabeth stepped inside, taking in the cramped living room with its dated furniture and religious icons. If she found it strange or beneath her, she didn't show it. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all, Mrs. Kowalski assured her. I'll make some coffee. That's not necessary. Elizabeth started, but the older woman had already bustled off to the kitchen, leaving them alone. Elizabeth removed her coat, revealing a simple sweater and jeans that probably cost more than Jack's monthly rent. She sat in the armchair across from him, hands clasped in her lap. How are you feeling? Better, Jack lied. His shoulder throbbed mercilessly. How's Amanda? She's at school, first day back since... Elizabeth trailed off. She's resilient, more than I am sometimes. Jack nodded. Kids often were. Elizabeth reached into her purse and withdrew an envelope. I wanted to give you this personally. Jack eyed the envelope suspiciously. What is it? A check to cover your medical expenses, lost wages, whatever you need. Jack didn't reach for it. I don't want your money, Mrs. Parker. Elizabeth, please? She set the envelope on the coffee table between them. And I understand pride, but this isn't charity. It's the least I can do. You don't owe me anything. You took a bullet meant for my daughter. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her emotion. I owe you everything. Jack shook his head. I did what anyone would do. That's the second time you've said that, and it's still not true. Elizabeth leaned forward. I've spent the past 5 days thinking about what happened. Everyone else ran. You didn't. You ran toward danger, toward my daughter. Jack looked away, uncomfortable with her scrutiny. Military training. No, Elizabeth countered. That was character, and I want to acknowledge it properly. Mrs. Kowalski returned with a tray bearing coffee in her best cups and a plate of store-bought cookies arranged to look homemade. Here we are, she announced. Polished coffee, very strong. Elizabeth accepted a cup with a polite smile. After Mrs. Kowalski retreated again, muttering something about giving them privacy, Elizabeth spoke. I've done some research on you, Mr. Sullivan. Jack raised an eyebrow. Should I be flattered or concerned? Impressed, perhaps. Navy SEAL, Bronze Star, honorable discharge after 8 years of service. Then private security work. She sipped her coffee. You could have had a much more lucrative career in personal protection or overseas contracting. Instead, you work events for minimum wage. Why? Jack's jaw tightened. He didn't like being investigated, having his life dissected by someone who couldn't possibly understand his choices. Those other jobs require travel. I have a daughter who needs me home every night. Understanding dawned in Elizabeth's eyes. Your wife? Cancer, 3 years ago. Elizabeth was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry for your loss. Jack nodded, accepting her sympathy without comment. My husband died 4 years ago, Elizabeth offered unexpectedly. Car accident on the Mass Pike. Black ice. I'm sorry. Elizabeth set down her coffee cup. Amanda was right, you know. About what? In the hospital. She said we were the same now, both single parents trying to do our best. Jack almost laughed at the comparison. With all due respect, our situations are hardly comparable. Different circumstances, same challenges. Elizabeth's eyes met his directly. Doing it alone, making decisions without a partner to consult, wondering if you're getting it right, being both mother and father. Put that way, perhaps there was some common ground. Jack conceded with a slight nod. Amanda hasn't stopped talking about Lily since they met, Elizabeth continued. She doesn't have many friends. Between my schedule and her security detail, she trailed off, looking slightly embarrassed. She's a lonely child. What are you asking? A play date for the girls. Elizabeth's composed expression cracked slightly, revealing uncertainty beneath. Amanda would love it, and I think Lily would too. Jack considered the request. It seemed innocent enough, but he couldn't shake the feeling that their worlds were too different. Still, the memory of the girls coloring together in the hospital room, heads bent in concentration, gave him pause. Lily didn't have many friends either. I could have my driver pick up Lily after school, Elizabeth suggested. They could play at our house, have dinner. I'd bring her home afterward. Our home, Jack corrected automatically. Elizabeth looked confused. Pardon? You said our house. It's not a house, it's a 2-bedroom apartment with a leaky faucet and radiators that clang all night. Elizabeth didn't flinch at his tone. I apologize for the assumption. Jack felt a twinge of guilt at his defensiveness. No, I'm sorry, that was unnecessary. It's a reasonable concern, Elizabeth acknowledged. Our circumstances are different, but children don't care about that unless adults teach them to. She had a point. Jack sighed, relenting. Lily has school until 3:15. She'd need to be home by 8:00 for bedtime. Elizabeth's face brightened with a genuine smile, not the polished one he'd seen in magazine photos, but something more real. Wonderful, is tomorrow too soon? Before Jack could answer, the front door burst open and Lily raced in, backpack bouncing. Daddy! Mrs. Kowalski, I got a gold star for my math test. She skidded to a halt when she saw their visitor. Oh, hello. Hello, Lily, Elizabeth greeted her. Congratulations on your gold star. Lily approached cautiously, glancing at Jack for reassurance. Thank you. Are you Amanda's mom? Elizabeth nodded. I am, and she's been asking when she might see you again. Lily's face lit up. Really, can I go play with her, Daddy, please? The eagerness in his daughter's voice decided it. Yes, Ladybug, Mrs. Parker has invited you for tomorrow. Lily bounced on her toes with excitement. Can I show her my butterfly collection and my special rocks? We'll have to see, Jack tempered. You'll be going to their house. Oh, Lily's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. But my collection is here. Elizabeth intervened smoothly. Perhaps next time Amanda could come here. Jack shot her a startled look. Elizabeth Parker in their tiny South Boston apartment. The idea seemed absurd. We could have a proper playdate rotation, Elizabeth continued. 1 week at our house, 1 week at yours, if that's agreeable to your father, of course. Lily turned pleading eyes to Jack. Please, Daddy. Jack found himself nodding despite his reservations. We'll see how tomorrow goes first. Elizabeth rose to leave, retrieving her coat. I should get back to the office. I'll have my assistant arrange everything for tomorrow. She extended her hand to Jack, who shook it awkwardly with his good arm. Her grip was firm, her skin soft against his calloused palm. At the door, she paused. The check, she reminded him, nodding toward the envelope still sitting on the coffee table. Keep it, Jack said firmly. I mean it. Elizabeth studied him for a moment, then inclined her head in acknowledgement. All right, but if you change your mind, she left the thought unfinished, placing a business card beside the envelope. My personal number is on the back. After she'd gone, Lily examined the card curiously. Is she your friend now, Daddy? Jack considered the question. No ladybug, not a friend, just someone whose path crossed ours. Because you saved Amanda. Yes, Lily nodded solemnly. Like how you saved those people in your Navy stories. Jack pulled her close with his good arm, pressing his face into her hair. Something like that, but those are different stories for when you're older. The next afternoon, precisely at 3:20, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside Lily's school. The driver, a stocky man with a military bearing that Jack recognized immediately, held up a sign with Lily's name. Jack had insisted on meeting them there, unwilling to simply put his daughter into a stranger's car, no matter whose it was. Mr. Sullivan, the driver extended his hand. Frank Donovan, Parker Security. Mrs. Parker said you might want to vet me yourself. Jack appreciated Elizabeth's understanding of his concern. Former service. Marines 10 years. 3 tours in Iraq. Donovan opened the rear door, revealing a booster seat already installed. Mrs. Parker had us pick this up this morning. A thoughtful touch. Jack helped Lily into the seat, securing the straps. You be good, okay? I'll see you tonight. Lily nodded, clutching her backpack. Can I show Amanda my special pen that writes in 3 colors? Of course, Jack assured her. Have fun. As the SUV pulled away, Jack fought the irrational urge to chase after it. This was normal. Parents had play dates all the time. But nothing about this situation felt normal. Back at Mrs. Kowalski's, Jack found a message waiting on his phone from the security company. They'd placed him on extended medical leave, which was better than being fired outright, but still meant no income for the foreseeable future. He'd need to start looking for other work, something that could accommodate his injury. His thoughts were interrupted by a call from an unknown number. Jack answered warily. Sullivan, a gruff, familiar voice greeted him. Mike Reynolds here. Heard you took one for the team. Jack couldn't help smiling. Mike had been his team leader during his first tour in Afghanistan. They'd stayed loosely in touch over the years. Reynolds, how'd you track me down? I have my sources. Plus, you're all over the news, hero. Jack grimaced at the label. Just doing what needed doing. That's what I told the guy who called asking about you. Jack tensed. What guy? Robert Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Security Systems. Said he was impressed by your actions, wanted to verify your service record. Jack's grip tightened on the phone. Blackwell was a major competitor to Parker Innovations in the security sector. What did you tell him? The truth, that you were one of the best I'd ever served with. Solid under pressure, good instincts, trustworthy. Mike paused. Why should I have kept my mouth shut? No, it's fine, Jack said, though he wasn't sure it was. Did he say why he was asking? Job offer, I'm guessing. His company does high-end security work, executive protection, that sort of thing. The kind of work Jack had deliberately avoided because of the travel requirements. Still, with his current financial situation, he couldn't afford to dismiss any potential opportunity. Thanks for the heads up. You take care of that shoulder, Mike advised before hanging up, and call if you need anything. I mean it. Jack has set the phone down, troubled. Why would Robert Blackwell be interested in him specifically? The timing seemed suspicious, coming so soon after the incident with Elizabeth Parker's daughter. His phone chimed with a text from Elizabeth. Lily has arrived safely. Girls already engrossed in a serious art project. Jack texted back a quick thanks, relieved. At least that was going well. Hours later, just after 8, the same black SUV pulled up outside Mrs. Kowalski's. Jack was waiting on the porch despite the evening chill. To his surprise, Elizabeth herself emerged from the vehicle, followed by an excited Lily. Daddy! Lily raced up the steps, brandishing a folder. Look what we made. Jack crouched to her level as she displayed a series of drawings. These are amazing, Ladybug. Amanda has a real art table with special markers that smell like fruit, Lily reported. And we had spaghetti for dinner, and ice cream with sprinkles, and we watched a movie about talking animals. Sounds like you had fun. Jack glanced up at Elizabeth, who had followed more sedately. Thank you for bringing her home. It was my pleasure, Elizabeth smiled. The girls get along remarkably well. Amanda's already planning their next adventure. Jack nodded, unsure how to respond. The reality of their different worlds seemed even more stark now. Lily chattering about art tables and movies while they stood on the porch of a building with peeling paint and security bars on the windows. Elizabeth seemed to sense his discomfort. Lily is welcome anytime. And the invitation stands for Amanda to visit here as well. We'll see, Jack hedged. My situation is a bit uncertain right now. Elizabeth's expression grew concerned. Your job, medical leave unpaid. I see. Elizabeth hesitated, then reached into her purse. I know you refused the check, but perhaps you'd consider another option. Jack stiffened. I told you I don't want a job, Elizabeth interrupted, with Parker Innovations, head of personal security for Amanda and myself. Jack stared at her, caught off guard. You're offering me a job? Yes. Elizabeth met his gaze steadily. We've had threats before, but nothing as brazen as what happened at the gala. I need someone I can trust completely. You barely know me. I know what matters. Elizabeth's voice was firm. I know you put your life on the line for my daughter without hesitation. I know you're trained, experienced, and principled. What more do I need to know? Jack shook his head. I appreciate the offer, but I can't. Why not? The same reason I've turned down similar jobs before. I need to be home for Lily. No travel, no extended hours. The position would accommodate that, Elizabeth assured him. Standard hours, weekends off, unless there's a specific event requiring coverage. We could even arrange for you to bring Lily along when appropriate. It sounded too good to be true. Why me specifically? You must have a security team already. Something flickered across Elizabeth's face, hesitation perhaps. I do, but recent events have made me question whether they're adequate or entirely trustworthy. What do you mean? Elizabeth glanced at Lily, who was now showing her drawings to Mrs. Kowalski through the window. Not here, but I'd value your professional opinion on some matters. Jack considered the offer. The pay would undoubtedly be better than his current job. The hours would work with Lily's schedule. And if Elizabeth Parker genuinely had security concerns, I'll think about it, he conceded. Relief washed over Elizabeth's features. That's all I ask. She handed him a thick envelope. The job description, compensation details, and some background on recent security incidents at Parker Innovations. Review it, and we can discuss further. As she turned to leave, Lily called from the doorway. Bye, Mrs. Parker. Tell Amanda I'll bring my special rocks next time. Elizabeth smiled, a genuine warmth transforming her features. I will, Lily. She's already excited. After the SUV disappeared around the corner, Jack took Lily inside for her bedtime routine. As he tucked her in, she looked up at him with serious eyes. Amanda's house is really big, Daddy, like a castle. I'm sure it is. But she doesn't have a Mrs. Kowalski next door or friends at school. Lily frowned. She said the other kids are mean because her mom is famous. Jack smoothed Lily's hair back from her forehead. Sometimes people treat you differently when they think you have more than they do. That's silly, Lily declared. Amanda just wants friends same as me. Out of the mouths of babes. Jack kissed her forehead. You're right, Ladybug. That is silly. Can she come play here? I told her about my butterfly collection and my special rocks, and she really wants to see them. We'll see, Jack hedged. Let's get back to our own apartment first. Lily nodded, settling deeper under her covers. I like Amanda, and Mrs. Parker seems nice, even though she looks sad sometimes. Sad? In her eyes, like you used to after Mommy went to heaven. Jack was struck by his daughter's perception. Everyone gets sad sometimes, Ladybug, even grown-ups. I know, Lily yawned. Night, Daddy. Good night, sweetheart. After she drifted off, Jack sat at Mrs. Kowalski's kitchen table and opened the envelope from Elizabeth. The job offer was indeed generous, a salary that tripled his current income, full benefits, a company car, and a schedule that would work around Lily's school hours. The security incidents report, however, gave him pause. Over the past 6 months, Parker Innovations had experienced a series of concerning events, a break-in at their research facility where nothing was stolen but files were accessed, threatening emails sent to Elizabeth directly, and most alarmingly, someone had tampered with her car's brakes just 2 weeks before the gala shooting. Jack read through the police reports with growing unease. These weren't random incidents. Someone was specifically targeting Elizabeth Parker and potentially her company. And now, after the failed attempt at the gala, they might target Amanda as well. His phone rang, startling him. Unknown number again. Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan? A man's voice smooth and professional. Robert Blackwell of Blackwell Security Systems. I hope I'm not calling too late. Jack's guard immediately went up. Not at all. I'll be direct. I was impressed by your actions at the Four Seasons Gala. That kind of instinct can't be taught. I'd like to offer you a position with my company. I appreciate the interest, Mr. Blackwell, but I'm currently considering other opportunities. A slight pause. With Parker Innovations, perhaps, The fact that Blackwell knew about Elizabeth's offer confirmed Jack's suspicions that something deeper was going on. I don't discuss potential employers. Of course. Professional discretion. I respect that. Blackwell's tone remained pleasant. However, before you make any decisions, I think we should meet. I have information about Elizabeth Parker that might influence your choice. What kind of information? Not over the phone. Let's just say there's more to the shooting incident than what was reported publicly. Jack's jaw tightened. Are you suggesting you know something about who targeted Mrs. Parker? I'm suggesting a conversation, Mr. Sullivan. Tomorrow noon at the Bristol Lounge, I'll have a private table. The line went dead before Jack could respond. He sat back, mind racing. First Elizabeth's job offer with its troubling security report, now Blackwell's cryptic invitation. The shooting at the gala suddenly felt like just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Jack pulled up news articles about both companies on his phone. Parker Innovations, founded by Elizabeth's late husband, had grown rapidly under her leadership after his death. They specialized in advanced security systems for government and corporate clients. Blackwell Security Systems was their main competitor, though rumors suggested Blackwell's company had lost several major contracts to Parker recently. Could this be simple corporate rivalry turned dangerous? Or something more personal? Jack returned to the security report. The brake tampering incident stood out not just because of its lethal intent, but because it had been discovered by chance when Elizabeth's regular driver called in sick and the replacement noticed fluid leaking during a routine check. If Elizabeth had been driving herself that day, the thought of Amanda potentially losing her mother sent a chill through Jack. He knew all too well what that loss did to a child. His decision crystallized. He would meet with Blackwell tomorrow, hear what the man had to say. But he was already leaning toward accepting Elizabeth's offer, not for the money, but because she and Amanda might genuinely need protection. And because, for reasons he couldn't quite articulate, he felt a responsibility toward them now. Jack texted Elizabeth, "I'd like to discuss the position further. When would be convenient?" Her response came almost immediately. "Tomorrow 9 a.m. my office." Perfect. He could meet with Elizabeth first, then Blackwell. Get both sides of whatever story was unfolding. "I'll be there," he replied. The following morning, Jack stood in the gleaming lobby of Parker Innovations headquarters in downtown Boston. The 30-story glass tower reflected the early morning sunlight, its modern architecture a stark contrast to the historic buildings surrounding it. Jack felt conspicuously out of place in his only suit, navy blue slightly worn at the cuffs purchased for Sarah's funeral and rarely worn since. The receptionist eyed him with polite suspicion until he gave his name, at which point her demeanor shifted dramatically. "Mr. Sullivan, Mrs. Parker is expecting you. Please follow me." She led him to a private elevator that whisked them to the top floor. The doors opened directly into a sleek reception area where a young man with wire-rimmed glasses greeted them. "Mr. Sullivan, welcome. I'm David Chen, Mrs. Parker's assistant." He extended his hand. "She's just finishing a call. Can I get you anything while you wait?" "No, thank you." David showed him to a comfortable seating area with a view of Boston Harbor. "Mrs. Parker mentioned you're a former SEAL. My brother served in the Army 2 tours in Iraq." Jack nodded. "Tough deployment." "Yeah, he doesn't talk about it much." David glanced toward the closed office door. "Just so you know, Mrs. Parker has been looking forward to this meeting. She was very impressed by you." Before Jack could respond, the office door opened and Elizabeth emerged. Today, she looked every inch the CEO in a tailored charcoal suit and heels that put her nearly at Jack's height. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek knot, emphasizing her sharp cheekbones and clear blue eyes. "Jack, thank you for coming." She extended her hand. "Please come in." Her office was spacious, but not ostentatious glass desk, ergonomic chair, comfortable seating area, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. Family photos decorated one wall, Elizabeth with a dark-haired man who must have been her husband, Amanda at various ages, the three of them on a beach somewhere looking carefree and happy. "Coffee," Elizabeth offered, gesturing to a carafe on a sideboard. "Please." As she poured, Jack noticed the tension in her shoulders, the careful way she kept her expression neutral. Something was bothering her. "I appreciated your message last night," she began, handing him a cup. "Have you had a chance to review the information I provided?" "I have." Jack accepted the coffee. "The security breaches are concerning." Elizabeth nodded, taking a seat across from him. "That's putting it mildly. The police haven't found any connections between the incidents, but I can't believe they're random." "Neither do I." Jack set his cup down. "Especially the brake tampering. That was personal." "My thoughts exactly." Elizabeth's composed exterior cracked slightly, revealing genuine fear beneath. After the shooting at the gala, I can't ignore the possibility that someone wants me dead. And what frightens me most is that Amanda could be collateral damage. Jack studied her for a moment. Do you have any idea who might want to harm you? Professionally, we have competitors who'd love to see Parker Innovations fail. Corporate espionage isn't uncommon in our industry. She hesitated. Personally, I've made enemies enforcing my late husband's vision for the company. Some former executives resented taking direction from me after Thomas died. What about Robert Blackwell? Elizabeth's expression hardened. What about him? He called me last night, offered me a job, suggested he had information about you that I should know before making any decisions. Elizabeth's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. Did he now? And what did you tell him? That I'd hear what he had to say. We're meeting at noon. I see. Elizabeth set her cup down carefully. And you're telling me this because I believe in transparency, and because I suspect whatever is going on between your companies might be relevant to these security incidents. Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment, considering. Then she rose and walked to the window, looking out over the city. Thomas and Robert Blackwell were business partners once years ago. They founded their first security company together out of MIT. This was news to Jack. What happened? What usually happens? Differing visions. Thomas wanted to focus on innovative technology, Robert on traditional security services. Elizabeth turned to face him. The split wasn't amicable. There were lawsuits, accusations of stolen intellectual property. Eventually they settled, divided the assets, and went their separate ways. And after your husband died, Robert approached me about merging the companies. A bitter smile crossed Elizabeth's face. He presented it as honoring Thomas's legacy, but the terms would have effectively given him control of everything my husband built. You refused. Categorically. Then I secured the Pentagon contract his company had been pursuing for years. Elizabeth's eyes met his directly. Robert doesn't like losing Jack, and he particularly doesn't like losing to a woman he believes shouldn't even be running a company. Jack absorbed this information, filling in gaps. You think he's behind the security breaches? I don't have proof, Elizabeth admitted, but yes, I suspect him. And the shooting at the gala, that seems extreme even for Robert, but I can't rule it out. Jack considered everything she'd told him, weighing it against his own observations. Why tell me all this? You barely know me. Elizabeth returned to her seat, leaning forward slightly. Because I need someone I can trust completely. My current security team was vetted and hired before these incidents began. I don't know who might have been compromised or bought. And you trust me because I took a bullet for Amanda. Yes. Elizabeth's gaze was unwavering. A man who would do that without hesitation, without calculation, is the kind of man I need protecting my daughter right now. The sincerity in her voice was compelling. Jack found himself nodding slowly. I'll meet with Blackwell as planned, hear his side, then make my decision. Fair enough. Elizabeth handed him a security badge. This will give you access to the building. The position is yours if you want it, regardless of what Blackwell tells you. As Jack stood to leave, Elizabeth added, one more thing. Amanda has been asking when Lily can visit. Would tomorrow after school work? I understand if it's too soon with everything else going on. The request, so ordinary amid their serious discussion, caught Jack off guard. I'm sure Lily would love that. Elizabeth smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her features. Wonderful. Amanda will be thrilled. In the elevator descending to the lobby, Jack reflected on their conversation. Elizabeth's suspicions about Blackwell seemed plausible, but he'd reserve judgment until after his meeting with the man. One thing was certain, whatever game was being played between these corporate rivals had turned dangerous, and innocent children like Amanda could be caught in the crossfire. That was something Jack couldn't allow to happen, not if he could prevent it. The Bristol Lounge exuded old-world luxury, dark wood leather chairs, attentive staff who moved with practiced discretion. Jack was escorted to a private booth in the back, where Robert Blackwell waited, nursing a tumbler of amber liquid despite the early hour. Blackwell rose as Jack approached, extending his hand. He was tall and fit for a man in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to power. Mr. Sullivan, thank you for coming. Jack shook his hand briefly, noting the expensive watch, the tailored suit. Mr. Blackwell. Robert, please. Blackwell gestured to the seat across from him. What can I get you? Just water. Blackwell signaled to a hovering waiter. Water for my guest, and I'll have another scotch. Once the waiter departed, he fixed Jack with an assessing gaze. I understand you met with Elizabeth Parker this morning. The fact that Blackwell knew about their meeting confirmed Jack's suspicion that the man had resources dedicated to monitoring Elizabeth. News travels fast. In certain circles, yes. Blackwell smiled thinly. Did she offer you a position? She did. And did she mention our shared history? Jack nodded. Former business partners. Didn't end well. Blackwell chuckled. That's one way of putting it. The waiter returned with their drinks, and Blackwell waited until they were alone again before continuing. What she probably didn't tell you is why Thomas Parker really cut ties with me. Jack remained silent, waiting. Thomas discovered some financial irregularities in our company accounts. Significant sums diverted to offshore holdings. Blackwell sipped his scotch. He assumed I was embezzling, confronted me, threatened legal action. The truth was more complicated. How so? The transfers were legitimate, part of a classified government contract that required absolute discretion. I couldn't tell Thomas even to save our partnership. Blackwell set his glass down. By the time I was authorized to explain, he'd already filed the lawsuits. Pride prevented reconciliation. The story sounded plausible, but Jack had learned to trust his instincts about people. Something in Blackwell's too smooth delivery rang false. What does this have to do with the shooting at the gala? Jack asked directly. Blackwell's expression darkened. Everything. Elizabeth has carried her husband's grudge forward, blocking my company from contracts, spreading rumors about our reliability. He leaned forward. But more relevant to your situation is what happened after Thomas died, which was Elizabeth discovered her husband's affair, a long-term relationship with his personal assistant. The woman was pregnant when he died. Jack kept his expression neutral, despite his surprise. And you know this how? The assistant came to me afterward, desperate for help. Elizabeth had fired her, threatened to destroy her if she ever went public. Blackwell's voice lowered. Thomas had changed his will to provide for the child. Elizabeth had it legally challenged, tied up in courts until the woman gave up and disappeared. If true, this painted a very different picture of Elizabeth Parker than the grieving widow and dedicated mother Jack had observed. Again, what does this have to do with the shooting? Character Mr. Sullivan. Elizabeth Parker presents herself as a devoted mother, a corporate leader with impeccable ethics. The reality is quite different. Blackwell fixed him with an intense stare. The shooting at the gala wasn't random, nor was it aimed at Elizabeth directly. Explain. The gunman was hired to create chaos, not casualties. A warning to Elizabeth about a deal she's been pursuing that would effectively destroy my company. Blackwell's jaw tightened. I don't approve of his methods, but I understand his motivations. Jack's eyes narrowed. You're saying you know who hired the shooter? I have my suspicions. Blackwell sat back. Former Parker Innovations executive forced out by Elizabeth after Thomas died. Man named James Harrington. He lost everything: career, reputation, marriage. The kind of man with nothing left to lose. The name wasn't familiar to Jack, but he filed it away for future investigation. Why tell me this? Because Elizabeth Parker isn't the victim she pretends to be. And while I want you to work for my company, more importantly, I don't want you working for her without knowing what you're getting into. Blackwell removed an envelope from his jacket. My offer, if you're interested: competitive salary, flexible hours to accommodate your daughter's needs. No travel unless you choose it. Jack took the envelope without opening it. I'll consider it. That's all I ask. Blackwell finished his scotch. One last thing. Whatever you decide, be careful around Elizabeth. She's not above using people's better instincts against them, particularly when it comes to her daughter. Jack left the restaurant with more questions than answers. Both Elizabeth and Blackwell had presented plausible narratives that cast the other as the villain. Both had made generous job offers. Both seemed genuinely concerned about the security situation, though from very different perspectives. The key difference Jack realized as he walked along the Boston Common was his own instinctive response to them. Elizabeth had been guarded but ultimately transparent, admitting she needed help. Blackwell had been smooth, confident, his story too perfectly constructed. And then there was Amanda. Jack had seen the girl's face in the moment of terror. At the gala, had held her trembling body as he shielded her from bullets. Whatever games the adults were playing, she was an innocent caught in their crossfire. His decision was made before he reached the park exit. Jack pulled out his phone and dialed Elizabeth's number. I'll take the job, he said when she answered. When do I start? The relief in her voice was palpable. Thank you, Jack. Can you come back to the office this afternoon to handle paperwork? And there are some security concerns I'd like to review immediately. I'll be there at 2. As he ended the call, Jack spotted a newspaper vending machine with the Boston Globe visible through the display window. The headline caught his eye: Parker Innovations announces breakthrough in quantum encryption. Jack inserted coins and retrieved a paper, scanning the article quickly. Elizabeth's company had developed a new encryption system that promised to revolutionize data security for government and military applications. The Pentagon contract previously mentioned would implement this technology across all defense networks within the year. The timing suddenly made sense. If Blackwell's company had been pursuing the same contract, this announcement would effectively end their hopes. A motive for corporate sabotage, perhaps even for the more personal attacks on Elizabeth. Jack folded the papers and continued walking to his mind, arranging pieces of the puzzle. One thing was increasingly clear: the danger to Elizabeth and Amanda was real, regardless of who was behind it. And he had committed himself to protecting them. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Kowalski. Lily wants to know if she can bring her butterfly collection to Amanda's house tomorrow. The ordinary concern amid extraordinary circumstances brought Jack back to what truly mattered. Two little girls forming a friendship. Two families whose paths had crossed because of a single moment of violence. Yes, he texted back. Tell her that will be fine. Whatever storm was coming, Jack would face it. For Lily, for Amanda, and for the chance to do what he did best: protect those who needed protecting. 3 weeks into his new role as head of personal security for the Parkers, Jack settled into a rhythm that balanced vigilance with normalcy. Each morning began with the security briefing at Parker Innovations, followed by escorting Elizabeth to the office. Then he'd supervise Amanda's transport to her private school before conducting his daily security assessments. The afternoons reversed the process, collecting Amanda, returning to the Parker residence in Beacon Hill, establishing the evening security protocols, then heading home to South Boston for dinner with Lily. The arrangement worked surprisingly well. Elizabeth had been true to her word about accommodating his schedule, and the girls' friendship blossomed with regular play dates alternating between the Parker mansion and Jack's modest apartment. Today was a Beacon Hill day, and Lily chattered excitedly in the back seat about the craft project Amanda had planned. Jack pulled through the ornate iron gates of the Parker estate, nodding to the security guard at the checkpoint. The Georgian-style mansion loomed ahead, its red brick facade and white columns projecting understated wealth. Nothing like the cramped walk-up where he and Lily had their two-bedroom apartment with its perpetually dripping faucet and temperamental heating system. As they approached the house, Amanda burst through the front door, practically vibrating with excitement. Lily, come see what I found in the attic. Mommy says we can use it. The girls disappeared inside while Jack completed his habitual security scan. The property's perimeter sensors showed no breaches. The surveillance cameras captured normal activity, and the staff had all checked in on schedule. Yet something felt off, an intuition he'd learned to trust in Afghanistan. He made a mental note to do an additional sweep later. Inside, Elizabeth worked at her home office, surrounded by reports and financial projections. She glanced up as Jack entered, the strain evident in the tight set of her shoulders. Anything concerning on the perimeter check? Jack shook his head. All clear, but I'd like to re-examine the eastern garden wall. The sensor there has been triggering false alarms. Elizabeth nodded, her focus already returning to her laptop. The Pentagon representatives are coming tomorrow to finalize the quantum encryption contract. Robert Blackwell has been unusually quiet since the announcement. Too quiet, Jack agreed. The lack of countermoves from Blackwell's security systems puzzled him. In the weeks since he'd taken the position, Jack had dug into the rivalry between the companies, uncovering a history more complex than either party had initially revealed. Thomas Parker and Robert Blackwell had indeed been business partners, whose relationships soured over financial disputes, but both Elizabeth and Blackwell had omitted crucial details. The classified government contract Blackwell mentioned was real, as were the offshore accounts. What remained unclear was whether Thomas Parker had known about them or if Blackwell had kept him deliberately in the dark. The sound of children's laughter drifted from upstairs, pulling Jack from his thoughts. I should check on the girls. Elizabeth closed her laptop with a sigh. I'll join you. I've been staring at these projections too long. They found Amanda and Lily in the mansion's third-floor playroom, surrounded by old photographs spread across the carpeted floor. A dusty trunk sat open nearby, clearly the source of their treasure. Amanda held up a faded color photograph. Look, Daddy Jack, it's Mommy when she was our age. Jack still hadn't quite adjusted to Amanda's new name for him, adopted after hearing Lily call him Daddy. Elizabeth had seemed surprised but not displeased by the development, acknowledging that Amanda needed a father figure in her life. The photograph showed a younger Elizabeth, perhaps 8 or 9, standing beside a stern-looking man in front of what appeared to be a military installation. "Your grandfather?" Jack asked, studying the man's rigid posture and formal attire. Elizabeth nodded, an unreadable expression crossing her face. "My father, Air Force Colonel, decorated Vietnam veteran. He had very specific ideas about how a Parker should behave." The girls continued sorting through photos, uncovering fragments of Elizabeth's past, her college graduation, early days at Parker Innovations, her wedding to Thomas. Jack noticed Elizabeth's discomfort growing with each revealed image, particularly those featuring her late husband. "Amanda, why don't you and Lily take these downstairs? We can make an album together after dinner," Elizabeth suggested, her tone light but brooking no argument. Once the girls had gathered their treasures and departed, Elizabeth closed the trunk with more force than necessary. Some memories are better left undisturbed. Jack studied her face, noting the subtle signs of distress she normally kept hidden. "Your husband." Elizabeth's fingers traced the brass lock on the trunk. 4 years, and it still feels like yesterday sometimes. Thomas was brilliant, charismatic, complicated. She hesitated, weighing her next words carefully. "There are things about our marriage that weren't in the company biography." Jack remained silent, sensing she needed to speak without interruption. "What Blackwell told you about the assistant, it wasn't entirely false." Elizabeth's admission hung in the air between them. "Thomas had affairs, multiple. The assistant was just the last one I discovered." Her voice hardened. "But there was no pregnancy, no changed will. That part was pure Blackwell manipulation." Jack absorbed this new information, reassessing the narrative Blackwell had presented. "Why tell me this now?" "Because I need you to understand the full picture if you're going to protect us effectively." Elizabeth moved toward the window, gazing out at the manicured gardens below. "Robert Blackwell knew about the affairs. In fact, he encouraged them. He and Thomas were close, once sharing more than just business interests, including women," Jack concluded. Elizabeth nodded, her expression grim. "When Thomas decided to end their partnership, Blackwell threatened to expose Thomas's indiscretions. My husband called his bluff, assuming Blackwell wouldn't risk implicating himself. But Blackwell didn't expose him. No, he found more subtle ways to retaliate. Corporate sabotage, poaching key employees, undermining investor confidence." Elizabeth turned back to face him. "After Thomas died, Blackwell approached me with his merger offer, presenting it as a gracious gesture to the grieving widow. While planning to take control of everything your husband built," Jack finished. "Precisely. When I refused, his tactics escalated." Elizabeth's voice remained steady, but Jack detected the underlying anger she rarely displayed. "What bothers me most is how he's using Thomas's memory as a weapon against me, making me the villain in his revisionist history." Jack considered everything he'd learned from Elizabeth, from Blackwell, from his own investigation. The picture remained incomplete, with each party revealing only what served their interests. "And James Harrington, the former executive Blackwell mentioned." Elizabeth's expression darkened. "James was Thomas's right hand for years. After the funeral, he expected to be named CEO. The board chose me instead, honoring Thomas's succession plan. James didn't take it well. Blackwell suggested he might be behind the shooting at the gala." "Convenient theory," Elizabeth replied, her tone bitter. "James was indeed forced out after challenging my leadership, but he landed on his feet at a Silicon Valley startup. He's currently in Singapore, establishing their Asian headquarters." A noise from downstairs interrupted their conversation, the security system announcing a visitor at the gate. Jack checked his phone to see the camera feed. "Car service, Amanda's piano teacher." Elizabeth nodded visibly, pulling herself back together. Her momentary vulnerability sealed away behind the composed exterior she showed the world. "We should go down. And Jack, what I've told you stays between us." Jack understood her caution. Trust came difficult to Elizabeth Parker, and these revelations represented a significant step. "Of course." As they descended this grand staircase, Jack reflected on the complex web surrounding him. Corporate rivalries, personal vendettas, family secrets, all potential motives for the threats against Elizabeth. Yet something still felt missing, a crucial piece that would make the entire picture clear. The piano lesson proceeded normally. Amanda's determined practice filling the house with scales and simple melodies, while Lily watched in fascination. Jack used the opportunity to conduct his additional security sweep, paying special attention to the eastern perimeter. Near the garden wall, partially concealed by ornamental shrubs, he discovered fresh scuff marks on the stone path in disturbed soil beneath a section of surveillance cameras. Someone had been there recently, someone who knew how to avoid direct camera detection. Jack took photographs with his phone and made notes of the exact locations before resuming his patrol. His instincts proved correct. Something wasn't right. The question was whether this represented preparation for an intrusion or merely reconnaissance. Either way, it confirmed his suspicion that the threats against Elizabeth remained active. Jack completed his sweep and returned to the house just as the piano teacher was leaving. Elizabeth had emerged from her office to listen to Amanda's progress, smiling with genuine pride as her daughter played a simple Bach minuet. "Beautiful sweetheart," Elizabeth praised when Amanda finished. "You've been practicing." Amanda beamed at the rare compliment from her often preoccupied mother. "Ms. Chen says I might be ready for the winter recital if I keep working hard." The domestic scene struck Jack with unexpected force, mother and daughter sharing a moment of connection, his own daughter watching with a mixture of admiration and longing. For an instant, they resembled the family in Amanda's crayon drawing from the hospital, the one labeled "For Our Family." The illusion shattered when Jack's phone vibrated with an alert. The eastern perimeter sensor had triggered again. He excused himself to investigate, already drawing his weapon as he moved toward the rear of the property. Outside, twilight had descended, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. Jack moved silently, using the darkness for cover as he approached the eastern wall. The sensor had triggered near a massive oak tree whose branches extended beyond the property line, a potential access point for someone skilled enough to utilize it. Movement flickered at the edge of his vision, a shadow detaching from the deeper darkness beneath the tree. Jack dropped to a crouch, weapon raised, but held his fire. Boston police wouldn't appreciate gunshots in Beacon Hill without clear justification. "Security response to East Perimeter," he spoke quietly into his communications device. "Possible intruder at the Oak. Approach with caution." Two of Elizabeth's regular security team acknowledged converging on his position from different angles. Jack tracked the shadow's movement as it retreated toward the wall. Not fleeing in panic, but withdrawing methodically. "Professional." "Stop right there," Jack called out, his voice carrying authority without excessive volume. "Security, hands where I can see them." The figure froze momentarily, then bolted toward the wall. Jack pursued, closing the distance with practiced efficiency. The intruder reached the wall and began to scale it with unexpected agility. Jack lunged forward, catching the figure's ankle just as they neared the top. A sharp kick connected with Jack's injured shoulder, sending pain radiating through his recently healed wound. He maintained his grip through the burst of agony, yanking downward with enough force to dislodge the climber. They fell together, Jack twisting to break his opponent's fall, with his own body not out of compassion, but to prevent escape. They hit the ground hard, Jack immediately rolling to pin the intruder beneath him. "Don't move," he growled, pressing his forearm against the figure's throat while his other hand secured their wrists. The security team arrived with flashlights, illuminating their captive, a woman in her 30s dressed in black tactical gear, her face partially concealed by a balaclava. Jack pulled it off, revealing East Asian features in a gaze that held calculation rather than fear. "Search her," Jack ordered, "then call Boston PD." The woman remained silent as the security team patted her down, removing a smartphone with a specialized case lockpicking tools and a small canister that appeared to be pepper spray. No weapons, interestingly. "Who sent you?" Jack demanded, maintaining pressure on her wrists. Her only response was a thin smile. The police arrived 20 minutes later, taking custody of the intruder and collecting statements from Jack and the security team. Detective Mercer, a veteran officer Jack had met during the investigation of the Gala shooting, pulled him aside after the initial questioning. "Third incident at Parker Properties in 2 months," Mercer noted, reviewing his notes. "Someone's got serious interest in Mrs. Parker or her company." Jack nodded toward the police cruiser where the woman sat handcuffed. "Any ID on her yet?" "Nothing on her person. Fingerprints are being run now." Mercer tucked his notebook away. "You're earning your salary, Sullivan. Most of these fancy Beacon Hill estates hire security for show. You actually caught someone." "Just doing my job," Jack replied, downplaying his actions while his mind raced with implications. The intruder had been too professional, too equipped for a simple break-in. This was corporate espionage at minimum, potentially something more sinister. Inside, Elizabeth waited in her study, Amanda and Lily safely upstairs with the household manager. Her calm exterior remained intact, but Jack noted the tension in her clasped hands, the slight acceleration of her breathing. "They've arrested her," Jack reported, closing the door behind him. "Professional job, not random." She had specialized equipment for bypassing security systems and gathering electronic intelligence. Elizabeth's composure cracked momentarily. "The quantum encryption specs. They must be after the final details before tomorrow's Pentagon meeting." "That's my assessment as well." Jack leaned against the desk, his shoulder throbbing from the confrontation. "The timing is too convenient to be coincidence." "Blackwell," Elizabeth practically spat the name. "He can't win the contract legitimately, so he's trying to steal our technology." Jack remained noncommittal. "Possibly, but let's wait for the police to identify her." "You don't think it's Blackwell?" Elizabeth's eyes narrowed slightly. "I'm considering all possibilities," Jack replied carefully, "including some you might not have considered, such as foreign intelligence. Your quantum encryption would be valuable to several nations currently investing in quantum computing. China, Russia, even allied countries might want access to the technology without the Pentagon restrictions." Elizabeth absorbed this perspective, her strategic mind visibly processing the implications. "That hadn't occurred to me. I've been so focused on Blackwell." "Which might be exactly what someone else is counting on," Jack pointed out. "Your rivalry provides excellent cover for a third party to operate." Before Elizabeth could respond, Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Detective Mercer. "Intruder identified as Min-ji Park. South Korean passport, but suspected ties to North Korean intelligence. This just got federal." Jack showed Elizabeth the message, watching her expression shift from suspicion to genuine alarm. "This complicates things considerably." Indeed. Elizabeth moved to the bar cart in the corner, pouring herself a measure of scotch with a slightly unsteady hand. "If foreign intelligence is targeting Parker Innovations, then the threats are potentially more serious than corporate espionage," Jack finished, "and the Pentagon meeting tomorrow becomes both more important and more dangerous." Elizabeth downed her drink in a single swallow. "I need to make some calls. The meeting can't be postponed. We're already under contract deadlines, but additional security measures will be necessary." "Agreed. I'll coordinate with federal agencies once they take jurisdiction." Jack checked his watch. "In the meantime, I should get Lily home. It's past her bedtime, and this has been enough excitement for one evening." "Of course." Elizabeth set down her glass. "I appreciate your quick response tonight, Jack. Without you—" She left the sentence unfinished, but her meaning was clear. Jack nodded, acknowledging her gratitude without requiring its verbalization. Their professional relationship had developed a shorthand over the past weeks built on mutual respect and shared concern for the children in their care. Upstairs, the girls had fallen asleep on Amanda's bed, surrounded by the old photographs they'd discovered earlier. Jack gently lifted Lily without waking her, settling her against his chest with practiced ease. Amanda stirred slightly. "Is everything okay, Daddy Jack?" Her voice was thick with sleep. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," he assured her quietly. "Just a false alarm. Go back to sleep." She nodded drowsily, already drifting off again. Jack felt a surge of protectiveness that extended beyond his professional responsibilities. These children, his daughter and the girl he'd saved, had become the center of his world in ways he hadn't anticipated when accepting this position. Elizabeth appeared in the doorway, watching Jack with Lily. Something softer than her usual guardedness crossed her face. "She can stay the night if you'd prefer not to wake her." Jack shook his head. "Thanks, but routine is important. She sleeps better in her own bed." "I understand." Elizabeth stepped aside to let him pass. "Drive safely. I'll see you in the morning for the Pentagon meeting." Outside, Jack carefully secured Lily in the backseat of his company vehicle, a modest SUV that prioritized security features over luxury. As he pulled away from the Parker estate, his mind replayed the evening's events, searching for patterns and connections. The intruder's identity raised significant questions. If North Korean intelligence was targeting Parker Innovations' quantum encryption technology, other state actors might be involved as well. The gala shooting took on new potential dimensions, perhaps not related to Blackwell's corporate rivalry at all, but part of a larger geopolitical chess game. Jack's phone rang through the car's speaker system. "Sullivan?" he answered, keeping his voice low to avoid waking Lily. "It's Mercer. Thought you'd want to know our intruder just lawyered up. Expensive counsel arrived within 30 minutes of her arrest." Jack frowned. "That was fast for someone supposedly operating as a foreign agent." "My thoughts exactly," Mercer replied. "Gets better. Guess who's paying the legal bills?" "Blackwell Security Systems." Jack predicted the pieces falling into place. "Got it in one." The FBI is taking over the case, but they're letting me stay involved given the connection to the gala shooting. Mercer's voice lowered. Something bigger's happening here, Sullivan. Watch your back. Always do. Thanks for the heads up. Jack ended the call, his suspicions crystallizing into certainty. This wasn't simply corporate espionage or foreign intelligence in isolation. The two were connected somehow. Blackwell and North Korean operatives working together seemed implausible, unless Blackwell's classified government contracts from his partnership days with Thomas Parker had involved North Korea. The offshore accounts suddenly made more sense if they were channeling funds from or to foreign entities outside official sanction. The quantum encryption technology Elizabeth had developed would render many existing intelligence gathering methods obsolete. If Blackwell had maintained unauthorized connections with foreign intelligence agencies, her Pentagon contract represented an existential threat to those relationships. Jack pulled into the parking space behind his apartment building, carrying Lily up the narrow stairwell to their unit. After settling her in bed, still fully clothed but too deeply asleep to disturb, he sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and began compiling everything he knew about Blackwell-Parker innovations and the connections between them. 3 hours later, his suspicions had solidified into a working theory. Thomas Parker had discovered Blackwell's unauthorized foreign connections during their partnership, not simple embezzlement, as Elizabeth believed, but something potentially treasonous. Their partnership dissolution and subsequent rivalry hadn't been merely about business direction, but about Parker's discovery of Blackwell's activities. If correct, this theory explained Blackwell's desperation to acquire Parker Innovations after Thomas's death. Not just for business advantage, but to bury evidence of his past activities and gain control of technologies that could protect his ongoing operations. Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Elizabeth. Still awake, need to discuss security for tomorrow. He called her immediately. I've been doing some research. Tomorrow's meeting may be more dangerous than we realized. Elizabeth's voice came through tense but controlled. The FBI just left. They've confirmed Minji Park's connections to North Korean intelligence, but they're puzzled by Blackwell's involvement in her legal representation. I have a theory about that, Jack replied, outlining his conclusions about Blackwell's potential foreign connections and Thomas Parker's discovery of them. Elizabeth remained silent for several beats after he finished. If you're right, this goes beyond corporate rivalry. Robert Blackwell committed treason. Potentially, and your quantum encryption technology threatens to expose or disrupt whatever operations he's still running, which makes tomorrow's meeting a likely target for intervention, Elizabeth concluded. We need to change the security protocols. The standard procedures won't be sufficient. Jack agreed. I've already drafted an alternative approach. We'll need to implement several countermeasures, including a decoy route and communications blackout. They spent the next hour refining the security plan, Jack drawing on his SEAL experience, while Elizabeth provided crucial details about the Pentagon representatives and meeting logistics. By the time they finished, it was well past midnight. You should get some sleep, Jack advised. Tomorrow will be demanding. Elizabeth sighed audibly. Sleep doesn't come easily these days, not since the gala. The admission of vulnerability rare from her caught Jack's attention. That's understandable. Trauma has lasting effects. It's not just fear for myself, Elizabeth clarified. It's Amanda. Every time I close my eyes, I see her standing there in that white dress, frozen in terror. And then I see you shielding her with your body while blood spread across the floor. Jack understood completely. He'd experienced similar flashbacks after losing teammates in Afghanistan, replaying events, imagining alternative outcomes, shouldering guilt for surviving when others hadn't. You can't change the past, he offered quietly. But you can ensure Amanda's future security. That's what we're doing now. Yes. Elizabeth's voice strengthened with renewed determination. Thank you, Jack. Not just for tomorrow's security, but for everything since the gala. Taking the bullet, taking the job, being there for Amanda, for understanding what's at stake. Get some rest, Elizabeth. I'll see you at 0700. After ending the call, Jack remained at the kitchen table staring at the scattered notes and diagrams he'd generated. The complexity of the situation had evolved far beyond a simple security position. He'd stepped into a decades-long conspiracy with international implications centered around a woman and child he'd come to care about more than professional detachment should allow. He checked on Lily one last time before attempting sleep himself. His daughter slept peacefully, untroubled by the dangers surrounding their new extended family. Jack brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, grateful for her innocence, while recognizing its fragility. Tomorrow's Pentagon meeting would either secure Elizabeth's contract and establish her quantum encryption as the new standard for military communications, or expose them all to whatever countermeasures Blackwell and his foreign partners might deploy to prevent it. The stakes extended beyond corporate success to national security and personal safety. Jack set his alarm for 5:00 a.m., allowing time to prepare properly. As head of security for the Parkers, his job was to anticipate threats and neutralize them before they materialized. But as the man who had taken a bullet for Amanda, his commitment ran deeper than professional obligation. These people had become more than clients. They had become family, complicated, imperfect, but worth protecting at any cost. Whatever tomorrow brought, Jack Sullivan would be ready. Not just because he was paid to be, but because some bonds transcended contracts and duty. The toughest battles weren't fought for country or ideology, but for the handful of people who mattered most. In Afghanistan, he'd fought for his team, his brothers in arms. Now he fought for two single parents and their daughters, trying to build something meaningful from circumstances neither had chosen. As sleep finally claimed him, Jack's last coherent thought was simple but profound. The strongest armor isn't Kevlar or tactical gear, but the willingness to stand between danger and those you've chosen to protect. Everything else, politics, corporate rivalries, international intrigue, was just context for that fundamental truth. Dawn broke over Boston Harbor, casting long shadows across the city as Jack guided the armored SUV through streets barely stirring with early morning activity. Elizabeth sat in the passenger seat, reviewing documents on her tablet while sipping coffee from a travel mug. In the back seat, Frank Donovan, the ex-Marine driver, Jack had reassigned as additional security, maintained vigilant watch through polarized windows. "We'll approach the Pentagon facility from the north," Jack explained deliberately, taking a route different from their filed transportation plan. "The decoy vehicle left Beacon Hill 15 minutes ago following our official route." Elizabeth nodded without looking up. "And Amanda, secure at the residence with doubled security." Mrs. Kowalski agreed to watch both girls there today instead of sending them to school. Jack checked the rearview mirror, confirming they weren't being followed. The house is the safest location under the circumstances. The quantum encryption contract signing represented the culmination of 3 years' work for Elizabeth. If successful, Parker innovations would set the security standard for military communications worldwide for decades to come. The technology's revolutionary nature, utilizing quantum entanglement to create encryption keys that change state if observed by unauthorized parties, made it virtually unhackable with existing technology. "Final confirmation from the Pentagon team?" Jack asked as they neared the secure facility where the meeting would take place. Elizabeth checked her secure phone. "All representatives confirmed on site. General Mitchell is personally overseeing the proceedings." The presence of a 4-star general underscored the importance of today's contract. It also presented an additional security concern: the gathering of high-value targets in a single location known to hostile actors. Jack had coordinated with military security and FBI counterintelligence throughout the night, implementing layered protocols that should prevent disruption. Should being the operative word. Jack's experience had taught him that no plans survive first contact with the enemy. "Final security briefing," he announced, turning onto the access road leading to the nondescript government facility. "Once inside, stay within arm's reach at all times. If I give the evacuation signal, move immediately toward whichever exit I indicate. Do not stop for documents or equipment. Everything can be replaced." Elizabeth finally looked up from her tablet, her expression resolute. "Understood. But Jack, this contract cannot be replaced. 3 years of development, hundreds of millions in research. If something happens to me, the fail-safe protocol activates." This was new information. What fail-safe protocol? Digital dead man's switch. If I don't enter a verification code every 12 hours, the complete quantum encryption specifications automatically transfer to specified Pentagon officials. Elizabeth's gaze held steady. It's insurance against exactly this type of situation. Jack processed this revelation with mixed feelings. The precaution made strategic sense, but he disliked learning critical information minutes before a high-risk operation. When was this implemented? After the gala shooting. I couldn't risk the technology being lost if something happened to me. Elizabeth tucked her tablet into her briefcase. "Only 3 people know about it: myself, my chief technology officer, and now you." They passed through the facility's first security checkpoint, their identities verified through multiple biometric scans. Jack utilized the delay to recalibrate his security assessment. Elizabeth's fail-safe protocol changed the threat calculus. If Blackwell or his foreign partners knew about it, They might see today's meeting as their last opportunity to prevent the technology's transfer to military control. The facility itself represented a formidable defensive position, multiple layers of security, armed guards, electronic countermeasures against surveillance. But Jack had learned in Afghanistan that determined enemies could penetrate even the most fortified compounds if sufficiently motivated. "Stay alert," he muttered to Donovan as they cleared the final checkpoint. "I don't like surprises." The ex-Marine nodded almost imperceptibly, his posture relaxed but eyes continuously scanning. Jack had selected him specifically for this assignment after reviewing all Parker security personnel backgrounds. Donovan had no connection to Blackwell and had served with distinction in high-threat protection details overseas. They were escorted through sterile quarters to a conference room where 6 people waited, 4 uniformed military officers, including General Mitchell, and 2 civilian officials from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. All rose as Elizabeth entered, a mark of respect for both her position and the technology she brought. Jack positioned himself just behind Elizabeth's right shoulder, maintaining clear sight lines to all entrances while monitoring everyone's movements. The room had been swept for electronic surveillance devices, but he remained vigilant for unconventional threats. "Mrs. Parker," General Mitchell stepped forward, extending his hand. "Thank you for accommodating our enhanced security measures." Elizabeth shook his hand firmly. "The precautions are warranted, General. We had an attempted security breach at my residence last night, a North Korean operative with apparent connections to Robert Blackwell." The general's expression darkened. "I was briefed on the incident this morning. It validates our concerns about foreign interest in your technology." The meeting proceeded with formal introductions and preliminary discussions, each participant authenticating their identity through secure protocols before substantive negotiations began. Jack maintained his vigilance throughout, noting that even in this secure environment, anxiety permeated the room. The stakes extended beyond corporate profits to national security implications that everyone present understood all too well. Elizabeth presented the final specifications for the quantum encryption system with practiced precision, her command of the technical details impressive even to the DARPA scientists. Jack observed with quiet pride how she controlled the room, not through intimidation or authority, but through sheer competence. The uncertain woman who had confided in him about her marital troubles seemed worlds away from this confident executive securing a historic contract. "The implementation timeline is aggressive but achievable," Elizabeth concluded. "Within 6 months, all strategic command communications can be transitioned to the new system. Within 18 months, we can extend coverage to all operational communications across the services." General Mitchell nodded approvingly. "Your team's work represents a genuine paradigm shift, Mrs. Parker. Once implemented, this system will neutralize significant intelligence advantages currently held by our adversaries." The contract documents were produced, multiple copies requiring signatures from all parties. As Elizabeth reached for her pen, Jack's instincts flared. Something felt wrong, not within the room itself, but somewhere in the facility. A subtle change in the building's ambient sounds, perhaps, or a shift in the guard's behavior outside the door. Jack moved closer to Elizabeth, hand discreetly moving toward his concealed weapon. "General, I recommend expediting the signing process. I believe we may have a security situation developing." Mitchell, a combat veteran himself, recognized the tone of someone whose instincts had been honed by experience. Without question, he signaled his staff to accelerate procedures while activating his secure communication device. Elizabeth signed each document quickly but carefully, passing them to the general for counter-signature. The process took approximately 90 seconds, during which Jack's sense of impending threat intensified. "Facility lockdown initiated," announced the security system suddenly. "All personnel implement security protocol Bravo 7 immediately. This is not a drill." Jack moved instantly, positioning himself between Elizabeth and the doors. "General, what's the nearest secure fallback position?" Mitchell was already receiving information through his earpiece. "Sub-level B Emergency Command Center. Follow me." Jack secured Elizabeth's briefcase containing the signed contracts and guided her toward the general, who was already moving toward a concealed door at the rear of the conference room. Donovan fell in behind them, creating a protective formation around Elizabeth as they exited. "What's happening?" Elizabeth whispered as they moved swiftly through a utilitarian corridor clearly designed for emergency evacuation. Jack kept his voice low, unknown at this point. "Could be a drill, could be a genuine threat. We maintain protocol until confirmed otherwise." General Mitchell led them to a secure elevator requiring his biometric authentication. "Perimeter breach detected on the north side. Initial reports suggest a coordinated attack with multiple hostile actors. The elevator descended rapidly to sub-level B, opening into a hardened command center, where military personnel monitored security feeds and communications. Jack immediately assessed the space, multiple exits, independent power, and air supplies weapons cache, visible through reinforced glass. A proper defensive position if the situation deteriorated further. General, we need immediate clarification on the nature of the threat, Jack requested as they settled Elizabeth in the most protected section of the facility. Mitchell gestured toward the main display where security camera feeds showed the developing situation. Approximately 8 minutes ago, 3 vehicles breached the outer perimeter using false credentials. When security attempted to verify identification at the secondary checkpoint, they deployed some type of electronic countermeasure that temporarily disabled our systems. The footage showed tactical teams in unmarked black gear deploying from the vehicles, moving with military precision through the facility. Their equipment and movements suggested professional training, not common criminals or terrorists, but special operations personnel or highly trained contractors. They're searching for something specific, Jack observed, noting how the intruders cleared rooms methodically rather than causing maximum damage. Or someone. Elizabeth stepped forward, watching the footage with growing horror. Me. They're looking for me, or more precisely, the quantum encryption specifications, which they've already missed, General Mitchell confirmed. The contracts are signed, the specifications officially transferred to Pentagon control. Even if they captured the physical documents, the technology is already secured through multiple redundant systems. Jack wasn't convinced their situation was secure. With respect, General, we should assume these hostiles have detailed intelligence about this facility and today's meeting. They may already know about this command center. As if confirming his assessment, one of the military analysts called out, "Sir, hostiles are accessing the emergency evacuation routes. They appear to have facility schematics and security protocols." Jack made an immediate decision. "We need to move Mrs. Parker to an alternate location immediately. This position is compromised." General Mitchell evaluated the rapidly deteriorating situation. "Agreed. We have a secure underground transit system connecting to the Naval Yard facility 2 miles east. We can evacuate through that route." "I'll take point with Mrs. Parker," Jack stated, already adjusting his tactical plan. "Donovan, you'll coordinate with the general security detail for rear coverage. We move in 30 seconds. Elizabeth gathered her belongings with remarkable composure given the circumstances. "Jack, if we're separated for any reason, remember what I told you about the fail-safe protocol. It activates in 9 hours unless I enter the verification code." Jack nodded grimly, understanding the implication. If these hostiles captured Elizabeth, they would have limited time to extract the code before losing access to the encryption technology forever. That made her both valuable and expendable once the code was obtained. "Stay close," he instructed as they prepared to move. "Whatever happens, I need you to follow my directions without hesitation or question." The evacuation route took them through maintenance corridors rarely used except in emergencies. General Mitchell led the way with 2 of his staff while Jack kept Elizabeth directly beside him. Donovan and the remaining military personnel formed the rear guard, creating a secure envelope for their high-value asset. They descended another level to access the underground transit system, a narrow-gauge railway originally constructed during the Cold War to allow secure movement between sensitive government facilities. The infrastructure showed its age but remained operational, with a small electric transport vehicle waiting on the tracks. "This will take us directly to the Naval Yard bunker," Mitchell explained as they boarded. "From there, we can arrange secure transport to a classified location until the situation is resolved." The transport began moving immediately, accelerating through the dimly lit tunnel. Jack maintained his vigilance, aware that this evacuation route would likely appear in any comprehensive facility schematics. If the hostiles had that level of intelligence, an ambush remained possible. Elizabeth sat rigidly beside him, her exterior calm betrayed only by the whiteness of her knuckles as she gripped her briefcase. "Jack, if something happens to me, Amanda—" "Nothing will happen to you," Jack interrupted firmly. "But if we're separated, my primary focus becomes getting you safely back to Amanda. That's non-negotiable." Elizabeth nodded, visibly drawing strength from his conviction. "I've never been good at depending on others. Even with Thomas, I maintained my independence. But right now, you're allowing a security professional to do his job." Jack completed her thought. "That's not weakness, it's tactical intelligence." A faint smile touched her lips, despite the circumstances. "Is that what they taught you in SEAL training?" How to reassure terrified civilians. They taught me that fear is normal. Panic is the enemy. Jack checked his weapon discreetly. You're handling this better than most four-star generals I've protected. Their momentary connection shattered as the transport vehicle suddenly decelerated, emergency brakes engaging automatically. Red warning lights illuminated the tunnel ahead, indicating a system malfunction or more likely deliberate interference. Defensive positions. General Mitchell ordered his personnel immediately deploying around Elizabeth. Command, this is Granite Actual. Transport system compromised at checkpoint Delta 7. Require immediate assistance. Static answered his communication attempt. Jack recognized the implications immediately. Signal jamming technology, another indication they faced a sophisticated adversary with specific tactical objectives. They've cut us off deliberately. He assessed mind racing through contingency options. General, how far to the Naval Yard access point? Approximately half a mile through the tunnel, Mitchell replied, already calculating the same variables. Too far to move quickly on foot with hostiles potentially in pursuit. Jack made his decision. We split into two teams. Donovan and I will take Mrs. Parker through maintenance access Delta 8. He indicated a service door visible approximately 50 yards ahead. It bypasses the main tunnel and connects to auxiliary systems. Your team creates a defensive position here to delay any pursuit. The general evaluated the proposal with professional detachment. That access point isn't on standard schematics. How do you know about it? I reviewed all facility documentation, including original construction blueprints, when preparing today's security protocols, Jack explained. The maintenance access leads to ventilation systems that connect to the harborside utility plant. From there, we can reach surface level and coordinate extraction. Mitchell nodded approvingly. Good initiative, Sullivan. We'll buy you as much time as possible. He handed Jack a specialized communication device. Quantum encrypted prototype, limited range, but immune to conventional jamming. Contact frequency is embedded. Jack accepted the device, recognizing its significance. The first field deployment of Mrs. Parker's technology. Fitting, isn't it? The general turned to his personnel, already organizing their defensive position. Gentlemen, we hold this position until relieved. Priority is delaying hostile forces to allow package extraction. Elizabeth gathered her belongings, understanding she represented the package in military terminology. Jack led her toward the maintenance access, with Donovan covering their rear. The small door required physical force to open after decades of disuse, its hinges protesting as Jack leveraged his strength against the corroded metal. Tight quarters, he warned as they entered the narrow maintenance corridor. Stay close and watch your footing. The passageway barely accommodated single-file movement, with exposed pipes and electrical conduits reducing headroom in sections. Emergency lighting provided minimal illumination, casting everything in a sickly red glow that transformed the underground space into something from a nightmare. They progressed approximately 100 yards when gunfire erupted behind them, sharp cracks echoing through the tunnel as General Mitchell's team engaged hostile forces. Jack increased their pace, knowing the defensive position would buy them minutes at most against well-equipped attackers. We need to reach the vertical access shaft, he instructed, navigating through increasingly complex junctions in the maintenance system. From there, we can ascend to the utility plant level. Elizabeth followed closely, her breathing controlled despite the physical exertion and psychological stress. Donovan maintained vigilant rear security, periodically checking for signs of pursuit through the claustrophobic passageways. The maintenance corridor terminated at a vertical shaft with metal rungs embedded in the concrete wall, stretching upward into darkness. Jack tested the lowest rungs, confirming they would support weight despite decades of exposure to underground moisture. I'll go first to confirm structural integrity, he decided, securing his weapon. Donovan, assist Mrs. Parker if necessary. We need to climb approximately 4 levels to reach the utility plant access. The ascent proved challenging, but manageable. The ancient rungs occasionally shifting under their weight, but holding firm enough for careful climbing. Jack maintained awareness of Elizabeth's progress below him, impressed by her physical capability despite her corporate background. The woman clearly maintained herself in better condition than most executives. They reached the utility plant access hatch after several minutes of steady climbing. Jack braced himself on the ladder and pushed against the heavy metal cover, applying gradually increasing force until it shifted with a grating sound. He emerged cautiously into a mechanical room filled with humming equipment, water purification systems, electrical distribution panels, climate control machinery. After confirming the space was secure, Jack helped Elizabeth through the hatch, then covered Donovan's emergence. They found themselves in what appeared to be the municipal water treatment facility adjacent to the naval yard, not their intended destination, but close enough to adjust their extraction plan. Communication check. Jack activated the quantum encrypted device General Mitchell had provided. Granite Actual, this is Sentinel. Package secure at alternate location Uniform 7. Require extraction coordination. Static answered briefly before a distorted voice responded. Sentinel transmission received. Granite Actual team is defensive positions compromised, hostile forces, pursuing through maintenance systems, extraction assets, 30 minutes. The fragmented message conveyed enough information Mitchell's team had been overwhelmed, and hostiles were now pursuing through the same route they had taken. Extraction would not arrive before their pursuers. We need to move, Jack decided immediately. This facility connects to the harbor through water intake systems. We can reach the waterfront and arrange alternative extraction. Elizabeth assessed their situation with remarkable clarity. The naval yard has continuous security patrols. If we can reach the waterfront, we can signal for assistance. Donovan checked his weapon and limited ammunition. Sir, I'll establish a delay position here to slow pursuit. Give you time to reach the extraction point with Mrs. Parker. Jack recognized the tactical soundness of the proposal but hesitated to separate their already minimal force. Negative. We stay together until absolutely necessary. Priority remains escorting the package to secure extraction. They navigated through the water treatment facility, following service corridors toward the harbor side of the complex. Jack's internal navigation remained accurate. They emerged onto a maintenance platform overlooking the water intake basin, where massive pipes drew harbor water into the filtration systems. There's our exit. Jackie indicated a service door leading to the exterior of the facility. Once outside, we'll be exposed briefly before reaching naval yard property. Moving quickly is essential. Before they could implement this plan, the distinctive sound of the access hatch opening echoed through the facility behind them. Their pursuers had arrived sooner than anticipated, likely utilizing equipment to accelerate their progress through the maintenance shafts. Change of plans, Jack decided instantly. Donovan, get Mrs. Parker to the naval yard perimeter. Standard recognition protocols with military security. I'll delay the hostiles here. Elizabeth gripped his arm. Jack, no, we stay together. Not tactically sound, he replied firmly. Donovan is fully capable of completing the escort mission. I'm better positioned to create an effective delay. The determination in his eyes prevented further argument. Elizabeth understood the professional calculation behind his decision. Jack's combat experience made him more effective at delaying hostile forces, while Donovan could focus exclusively on rapid movement to secure territory. Amanda needs you to come back, Elizabeth said quietly, her composure momentarily cracking to reveal genuine concern. Lily needs her father. Jack nodded once. I know. This isn't a last stand, it's a tactical delay. Now go. That's an order, Donovan. The ex-Marine acknowledged the command, guiding Elizabeth toward the exterior access. Jack positioned himself with clear sight lines to the approach corridors, utilizing water purification equipment for cover, while identifying potential choke points for defensive action. As the door closed behind Elizabeth and Donovan, Jack breathed deeply, accessing the calm focus that had served him through dozens of combat engagements in Afghanistan. This wasn't his first time facing superior numbers in hostile territory. The key difference now was who he was fighting for. The first hostile appeared at the quarter junction, moving with tactical precision that confirmed Jack's assessment of their professional training. He allowed the point man to advance, waiting until a second figure appeared before taking action. Two controlled shots neutralized both threats, their bodies creating an obstacle that would force subsequent attackers to adjust their approach. Jack immediately relocated, avoiding the obvious counterfire that riddled his previous position. These weren't undisciplined fighters. They adapted quickly, deploying what appeared to be specialized sensing equipment to locate his position. Military-grade technology further confirming his suspicion that these hostiles represented state-level actors rather than corporate espionage. The firefight intensified as more hostiles entered the space, forcing Jack into increasingly defensive positions. He utilized his environment, effectively rupturing a water purification chemical tank to create visual obscuration, shorting electrical systems to eliminate lighting advantages. Each action bought precious seconds for Elizabeth and Donovan to increase their distance. After approximately 7 minutes of sustained engagement, Jack's tactical situation deteriorated critically. His ammunition reached critical levels. Multiple hostiles had established containment positions, and at least one opponent had deployed thermal imaging equipment to counter his concealment efforts. A new voice called out in the momentary silence between exchanges, "Mr. Sullivan, there's no need for further bloodshed. We have no quarrel with you personally." Jack remained silent, using the conversation attempt to reposition while assessing his dwindling options. "Mrs. Parker has already been intercepted," the voice continued. "Your escort mission has failed. Surrender now and you'll be released unharmed once our operation concludes." This claim could be deception, but Jack couldn't dismiss it entirely. If Elizabeth had been captured, the implications extended beyond today's security breach to the failsafe protocol she had established. The verification code would become the hostile's primary objective, extractable through various means, none of which Elizabeth was trained to resist. Jack activated the quantum encrypted communication device. "Donovan status report." Silence answered, deepening his concern. Either the device's limited range had been exceeded, or something had happened to the escort team. Neither possibility improved his tactical options. The voice called out again. "Final opportunity, Mr. Sullivan. We're not here to kill Americans. Our objective is specific and limited. Once achieved, this unfortunate incident concludes for all parties." Jack evaluated his remaining capabilities against mission objectives. If Elizabeth had indeed been captured, his priorities shifted from delay to pursuit and recovery. Continuing this engagement wasted precious time and resources. "I'm coming out," he called, implementing his contingency plan. "Weapon down, hands visible." Jack placed his sidearm on the floor and emerged from cover with hands raised, presenting a surrender posture while maintaining awareness of all hostiles. 5 figures in tactical gear converged, maintaining professional distance while covering him from multiple angles. Their equipment confirmed his earlier assessment, military-grade specialized for covert operations. The apparent leader stepped forward, face concealed behind a tactical mask. "Wise decision, Mr. Sullivan. Secure him and prepare for extraction." As the hostiles moved to restrain him, Jack implemented his actual plan, not surrender, but tactical repositioning that required closer engagement. The first hostile approached with restraints, momentarily lowering his weapon as procedure dictated. Jack exploded into action, leveraging years of close-quarters combat training against opponents accustomed to ranged engagement. The first hostile went down with a crushed trachea, his weapon captured and immediately employed against his companions. 3 precision shots neutralized immediate threats before the weapon's ammunition depleted. The remaining hostile, better positioned than his companions, returned fire effectively. Jack felt the impact as a round penetrated his left side, not immediately debilitating, but potentially fatal without medical intervention. He pushed through the pain, closing distance with his attacker through sheer willpower. Their engagement shifted to hand-to-hand combat, both men applying lethal techniques with professional efficiency. Jack's opponent demonstrated specialized training, possibly Russian systema, or similar military close combat methodology. Under normal circumstances, an even match. With Jack's gunshot wound progressively weakening him, the advantage shifted to his opponent. A desperate gamble became necessary. Jack intentionally overextended during an exchange, creating vulnerability that his opponent predictably exploited. As the hostile committed to his counterstrike, Jack accepted a devastating impact to his injured side to create the opening needed for his own killing blow, a precise strike to the carotid artery that would prove fatal within minutes. Both men collapsed, Jack's vision graying from pain and blood loss. Through sheer determination, he recovered the quantum communication device from his pocket, activating it with blood-slickened fingers. "Sentinel requesting immediate assistance," he managed through gritted teeth. "Water treatment facility. Hostile forces neutralized, but package status unknown." Static answered, then a clear voice responded. "Sentinel, this is Granite Actual. Extraction team inbound to your position. Donovan reports package secure at Naval Yard perimeter. Hold position." Relief washed through Jack alongside the encroaching shock from his injuries. Elizabeth had reached safety despite the hostiles' claims otherwise. Their deception confirmed what he'd suspected. These weren't merely hired guns, but trained intelligence operatives utilizing psychological warfare techniques. Jack applied pressures to his wound, calculating survival probabilities against estimated extraction timeframes. The bullet had penetrated his left side between ribs, possibly damaging internal organs. Survivable with prompt medical intervention, potentially fatal otherwise. As consciousness began to fade, Jack's thoughts turned not to his own survival, but to the promises he'd made. To Elizabeth ensuring her safety, to Amanda protecting her future, to his own daughter Lily returning home as he'd always promised. The promises fathers made to their children carried sacred weight, a lesson Jack had learned watching his own father break similar promises repeatedly throughout his childhood. He'd sworn never to inflict that same wound on Lily. Now bleeding out in an underground water treatment facility, that commitment faced its greatest test. Not today, Jack muttered through clenched teeth, applying additional pressure to his wound. Not leaving them today. Focusing on his breathing helped manage the pain and slow the blood loss. Jack had sustained serious injuries before in training and combat operations. The key to survival was maintaining consciousness until help arrived. Mind over matter, the SEAL mantra that had carried him through BUDS training and multiple combat deployments. The extraction team arrived 14 minutes later, led by General Mitchell himself despite visible injuries from his earlier engagement with hostile forces. Sullivan, the general, knelt beside him, already signaling for the medical specialist. Impressive work. 5 hostiles neutralized solo. Jack focused on the essential information. Elizabeth, Amanda, Mrs. Parker is secure at Naval Yard, medical minor injuries only. No civilian casualties. Mitchell supervised as the medical specialist began treatment. The hostiles breached with detailed inside information. Someone compromised our security protocols. Jack nodded weakly, the implication clear. Blackwell has sources inside your organization. That's being investigated at the highest levels, Mitchell confirmed grimly. Preliminary identification suggests these hostiles were private military contractors with Russian training, possibly operating through North Korean intermediaries. Plausible deniability for all parties involved. The medical specialist stabilized Jack's wounds sufficiently for transport, administering blood plasma and morphine to address shock symptoms. As they prepared to move him, Jack grasped Mitchell's sleeve. The quantum encryption contract, the general smiled slightly. Fully executed and already implemented on critical systems. Mrs. Parker's technology performed flawlessly during the crisis. Our quantum encrypted communications remain secure despite sophisticated jamming attempts. Relief washed through Jack alongside the morphine. His mission objectives had been achieved despite the operational complications. Elizabeth's work would revolutionize military communications security, potentially saving countless lives in future conflicts. Sir, the medical specialist addressed General Mitchell urgently. We need to move now. He's stabilized but requires surgical intervention. The extraction proceeded efficiently, transferring Jack to the Naval Yard medical facility where Elizabeth waited. She rushed forward when they brought him in, her composed exterior cracking at the sight of his injuries. Jack, she gripped his hand as medical personnel prepared him for surgery. You shouldn't have separated from us. Donovan could have handled the delay. Despite pain and medication, Jack managed a smile. Tactical decision, right one too. Your safe contract secure, mission accomplished. Elizabeth's eyes glistened with uncharacteristic emotion. The mission was getting everyone home safely, not just me. And the girls, Jack asked, fighting to maintain consciousness as they prepared to move him to surgery. Both fine, still at the house with Mrs. Kowalski, completely unaware of what happened. Elizabeth squeezed his hand. Focus on recovery now. Amanda and Lily are waiting for you. As medical personnel began moving him towards surgery, Jack held on to consciousness long enough to secure one final commitment. Tell Lily I'll be home soon. Promise her for me. Elizabeth nodded solemnly. I will, and Jack, thank you for keeping your promise to me. You protected what matters most. Those words accompanied him into unconsciousness as the surgical team began their work. Jack Sullivan had faced death before in training exercises and combat deployments, but never with such personal stakes. Now his recovery meant more than professional accomplishment or service to country. It represented his commitment to the family he'd unexpectedly found. 4 days later, Jack woke in a private hospital room to find Lily asleep in a chair beside his bed, her small hand clutching his. The sunlight streaming through the window suggested late afternoon, the medical equipment surrounding him indicating he remained in serious but stable condition. Daddy? Lily stirred immediately, alert when she sensed his movement. You're awake. Jack managed a smile despite the pain radiating from his surgical site. Hey, Ladybug, sorry I scared you. Lily climbed carefully onto the bed, mindful of his injuries and the medical equipment. Mrs. Parker said you got hurt protecting people, like in your Navy stories. Something like that, Jack acknowledged, stroking his daughter's hair. How long have I been here? 4 days, Elizabeth answered from the doorway, Amanda beside her. You've been in and out of consciousness since the surgery. This is the first time you've been fully lucid. Amanda broke away from her mother, approaching the bed cautiously. Are you going to be okay, Daddy Jack? The concern in her voice touched something deep in Jack's heart. This child who had entered his life through violence and trauma now regarded him with genuine love, a gift he'd never anticipated when taking a bullet for her months ago. I'll be fine, sweetheart, Jack assured her. It takes more than this to keep me down. Elizabeth moved closer, her professional composure firmly back in place, though her eyes revealed genuine relief at his recovery. The doctors are optimistic. The bullet missed vital organs by millimeters. They're calling it miraculous. Not miraculous, Jack corrected. Motivated, I made promises to keep. The days that followed brought gradual recovery, alongside revelations about the attack and its aftermath. Robert Blackwell had been arrested by federal authorities after evidence emerged linking him to both the Parker residence intrusion and the attack on the secure facility. The investigation revealed decades of unauthorized technology transfers to foreign entities, confirming Jack's theory about his classified government contracts. More personally significant was the evolution of their unusual family arrangement. Elizabeth had brought Lily to stay at the Parker mansion during Jack's hospitalization, creating a supportive environment for both girls during the crisis. When Jack was finally released from hospital care, Elizabeth insisted he recuperate at her residence rather than attempting to manage in his apartment. It's purely practical, she explained as her staff prepared a guest suite for his recovery. You need proper care during rehabilitation, and the girls benefit from stability during this period. Jack recognized her explanation for what it was: Elizabeth Parker, the composed CEO who maintained rigid control over her emotions, offering care and connection without explicitly acknowledging the growing bonds between them. He accepted the arrangement without argument, understanding that some transformations required patience. 6 weeks after the attack, Jack's physical recovery had progressed significantly. Though not yet cleared for full duty, he had resumed limited security oversight for the Parker family while continuing his rehabilitation. The four of them, Jack, Elizabeth, Lily, and Amanda, had settled into a comfortable routine that increasingly resembled a traditional family structure despite its unconventional origins. One evening, as Jack supervised the girls' homework at the kitchen table, Elizabeth returned from a late board meeting looking uncharacteristically troubled. She waited until the children were occupied before approaching him. We need to talk, she began quietly, somewhere private. Jack followed her to the home office, concern mounting at her serious expression. What's happened? Elizabeth closed the door before responding. The federal investigation into Blackwell uncovered additional information about Thomas's death. It wasn't an accident. The implications struck Jack immediately. Blackwell had him killed. Not directly, but effectively. Elizabeth maintained remarkable composure despite the devastating revelation. Thomas discovered evidence of Blackwell's foreign intelligence connections. He was preparing to contact federal authorities when his car crashed on the Mass Pike. The black ice reported in the accident investigation, manufactured, specialized chemical compounds sprayed on the roadway at a precise location where Thomas regularly drove. Elizabeth's hands trembled slightly before she clasped them together. The FBI found the formula in Blackwell's secured files alongside surveillance reports tracking Thomas's movements prior to the accident. Jack absorbed this information silently, understanding its profound implications for Elizabeth. Her husband hadn't simply died. He'd been murdered by his former partner, leaving her to raise their daughter alone while fighting to preserve his company legacy. I'm sorry, he offered, finally knowing words proved inadequate against such betrayal. Elizabeth nodded stiffly. 4 years believing it was a tragic accident. 4 years rebuilding my life in Amanda's never suspecting. Her composure cracked momentarily before she reasserted control. The federal prosecutor wants my testimony for the case against Blackwell. Multiple charges, including conspiracy, treason, and now murder. You'll testify, of course. Elizabeth's determination shone through her grief. But I'm concerned about Amanda. She barely remembers Thomas, but learning her father was murdered. Jack understood the dilemma immediately. She's too young to process something so complex, but eventually she'll need to know the truth. Yes, just not yet. Elizabeth's eyes met his directly. Which brings me to another matter. The board has requested I temporarily relocate to our West Coast office while the legal proceedings against Blackwell progress. It would mean moving Amanda mid-school year, disrupting the stability she's finally found. Jack waited, sensing Elizabeth was building towards something significant. I'd like Amanda to stay here, she continued carefully. With you and Lily. It would maintain her school routine, her friendship with Lily, and keep her away from the media circus that will inevitably surround the trial. The request represented extraordinary trust. Elizabeth Parker, who controlled every aspect of her life, with meticulous precision, willingly separating them from her daughter to protect her. You're sure about this? No, Elizabeth admitted with rare vulnerability. I've never been separated from Amanda for more than a business trip, but I need to know she's safe and happy while I handle this ugliness. And she's never been happier than these past months with you and Lily. Jack considered the proposal thoughtfully. We'd need to make it legal temporary guardianship at minimum, and we'd need to explain it carefully to both girls. Already addressed, Elizabeth indicated a folder on her desk. My attorneys have prepared the necessary documentation renewable monthly so you don't feel trapped in a permanent arrangement. The care she'd taken to preserve his autonomy within the arrangement spoke volumes about her respect for his position. How long do you anticipate being away? 3 months minimum, possibly 6 depending on trial preparations. Elizabeth maintained her business-like approach despite the emotional undercurrents. I'd return regularly, of course, and maintain daily video calls with Amanda. Jack studied Elizabeth's expression, recognizing the painful calculations she'd made sacrificing daily contact with her daughter to protect her from psychological trauma and media intrusion. The decision reflected remarkable maternal instinct from a woman who often projected cool professional detachment. Amanda will be safe with us, he promised simply. Lily will be thrilled to have her sister staying permanently. Elizabeth's careful composure faltered at his choice of words. Sister, that's how they see each other now, Jack observed gently. Family isn't always about biology. Sometimes it's about who stands beside you when bullets fly. The metaphor wasn't merely figurative given their shared history. Elizabeth acknowledged this with a slight nod, her eyes revealing emotions her words wouldn't express. Thank you, Jack, for everything since that night at the gala. No thanks needed, Jack replied. We protect what matters. That's what family does. 3 days later, they gathered in the Parker Mansion's living room to explain the arrangement to the girls. Elizabeth had prepared a careful presentation emphasizing the temporary nature of her absence and the exciting extended sleepover Amanda would enjoy with Lily. But why can't I come with you, Mommy? Amanda asked, confusion evident despite Elizabeth's positive framing. Elizabeth knelt to her daughter's level, choosing honesty within age-appropriate boundaries. The work I need to do involves some bad people who tried to hurt our company. The lawyers and police need my help to make sure those people can't hurt anyone else. It's not a place for children, sweetheart. Amanda considered this explanation with remarkable maturity. Like when Daddy Jack stopped the bad people who tried to hurt us. Yes, exactly like that, Elizabeth confirmed. Sometimes adults have to handle difficult things to keep everyone safe. While I do that, you'll stay here with Daddy Jack and Lily. Jack watched the exchange with profound respect for Elizabeth's approach, neither shielding Amanda from reality nor burdening her with inappropriate details. The balance reflected genuine parental wisdom, often overlooked in Elizabeth's corporate achievements. Will you call every day? Amanda asked, her primary concern becoming clear. Every single day, Elizabeth promised, morning and bedtime, and I'll fly back to visit as often as possible. This reassurance satisfied Amanda, who turned to Lily with growing excitement about their extended time together. The girls quickly began planning activities and projects, their resilience a powerful reminder of children's adaptive capacity when provided security and honest communication. As the girls discussed room arrangements, Amanda would maintain her bedroom, while Elizabeth's master suite would remain untouched during her absence. Jack observed Elizabeth's carefully controlled expression. Behind her composed exterior, he recognized the emotional struggle of a mother preparing for separation from her child, regardless of how necessary or temporary. Later that evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Jack found Elizabeth in her study staring at family photographs, reminders of a past now revealed as more complicated than she'd understood. Second thoughts, he asked quietly, respecting her privacy while offering support. Elizabeth shook her head. Not about Amanda staying. That decision is correct, though difficult. She touched a photograph of Thomas holding infant Amanda. I'm struggling with how much of my marriage was real and how much was compromised by Blackwell's manipulation. Thomas made significant mistakes, but he died trying to correct them. He deserved better than assassination disguised as accident. Jack understood the profound disorientation of discovering one's personal history contained hidden dimensions. The good parts remain true regardless of what you've learned. Your memories with Thomas, the family you created, Amanda's existence, those realities stand independent of Blackwell's actions. Elizabeth considered his perspective thoughtfully. When did you become so wise about marriage and family, Jack Sullivan? Not wisdom, he clarified. Experience. After Sarah died, I spent months agonizing over every argument, every missed opportunity, every moment I'd taken for granted. Eventually, I realized that rewriting history with perfect understanding didn't honor what we'd actually shared. This insight resonated visibly with Elizabeth, offering perspectives she hadn't considered. Thank you for that, and for accepting responsibility for Amanda during my absence. It represents extraordinary trust on both sides. Jack nodded, acknowledging the significance of their arrangement. We've come a long way from that night at the gala. Indeed. Elizabeth's gaze turned contemplative. That bullet changed everything, didn't it? One moment of violence reshaping four lives completely. Not the bullet, Jack corrected gently. The choices we made afterward. You could have sent a check and continued your life separately. I could have recovered and moved on without accepting your job offer. The bullet created an intersection, but we chose to build something at that crossing. Elizabeth smiled, a genuine expression rarely displayed in professional settings. Perhaps we should acknowledge what we've built, Jack. These past months, watching you with Amanda, seeing Lily blossom in this environment, it's become more than a security arrangement or convenient childcare solution. Jack recognized the significance of Elizabeth Parker, master of careful corporate communication, approaching personal vulnerability so directly. What are you suggesting? That we stop pretending this is temporary or professionally expedient. Elizabeth met his gaze directly. When I return from the West Coast assignments, perhaps we discuss more permanent arrangements for our family. The word family hung between them, significant, not for its utterance, but for Elizabeth claiming ownership of the concept so directly. Jack appreciated the magnitude of this step for a woman who had maintained rigid independence following her husband's death. I'd welcome that conversation, he replied simply. The girls would too, I suspect. Elizabeth nodded, seemingly satisfied with this understated agreement to explore deeper connections upon her return. Neither required dramatic declarations or traditional romantic gestures. Their bond had formed through shared danger, mutual respect and commitment to the children, who connected them initially through chance and later through choice. As Jack prepared to leave her study, Elizabeth spoke once more. Jack, I've never properly thanked you for taking that bullet, not just for saving Amanda's life, but for everything that followed. You changed our world that night. Jack paused in the doorway, considering her words. Some might call it destiny or fate. I just call it being in the right place at the right time. I don't believe in coincidences anymore, Elizabeth replied softly. Some people enter our lives precisely when needed, whether we recognize that need or not. You were exactly where you belonged that night. As Jack returned to his guest suite, he reflected on their extraordinary journey from strangers connected by violence to family united by choice. The bullet that had torn through his shoulder at the gala had indeed changed everything, not through its destructive power, but through the healing connections formed in its aftermath. The strongest families weren't always created through traditional means. Sometimes they formed in moments of crisis, forged through shared purpose and mutual protection. Jack Sullivan, who had lost his first family to cancer's merciless progression, had unexpectedly found a second through an act of instinctive heroism. In protecting a stranger's child without hesitation, he had created the foundation for something neither he nor Elizabeth could have anticipated that chaotic night at the Four Seasons. Something worth building, worth defending, worth believing in. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Elizabeth's departure, Amanda's adjustment, the continuing investigation into Blackwell's extensive crimes. But tonight, Jack took comfort in the knowledge that their unusual family had already survived Bullet's betrayal and attempted kidnapping. Whatever came next, they would face it together, not as security professional and client, but as partners protecting what mattered most. Sometimes the family you choose proves stronger than the family you're born into. Sometimes the bullet that should end everything becomes the beginning instead. And sometimes the act of shielding another from harm creates connections stronger than blood itself.